Bedlam is a byword for madness, but it is, or was, more properly known as Bedlam Royal Hospital or St Mary Bethlehem Hospital. It is associated with King's College London and the Institute for Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience, and it remains an important location for research to this day. However, it is a very old place and has existed across multiple sites throughout London. Bedlam was founded in 1247 as a priory by an order of Knights Martial, warrior monks in essence. In this time it wasn't a hospital per se, but a place for alms to be gathered to support the Crusades and the care of the Crusaders. Crusades are an expensive business, and so Bedlam became a hospice for the poor, as well as a site for visiting clergy. When precisely it shifted gears to become a hospital in the modern sense is unclear, but its direct connections with the church were severed within 200 years of its founding, allowing the site to evade the destruction caused by the dissolution of the monasteries by Henry VIII. It was, after all, no longer a priory. For whatever reason, perhaps their housing of the homeless and destitute who were frequently insane, Bedlam became known for caring for the mad early on, as early as the 14th century by some reckoning. Once you get a reputation for something, things tend to snowball, and a reputation for caring for the insane tended to get more insane people taken there. Caring is not an apt description for much of Bedlam's history, as care, at least in the beginning, tended to mean just locking people up and throwing away the key. The insane were shackled, chained, locked in cells, often alone, or placed in stocks. No attempt was made at any cure, at least no serious one, and the only care available would have been a variety of medieval tortures or exorcisms, none conducive to soothing the mind. By the 16th century, Bedlam was cemented in the popular mind as a byword for insanity. It fascinated artists and writers and playwrights, and appeared as a location in many plays of the period. Thereby, it played the role in both reality and the phantasmagorical, as a place of insanity and strangeness, a backdrop. This popularization also seems to have contributed to the spectacle of Bedlam allowing public visitation. In the 17th century, the true horrors of Bedlam began in earnest. Helkiah Crook, keeper-physician of the hospital and its inmates, the poor and prisoners, as it was stated, was not a nice man. He starved and extorted the patients and their families. He tortured them, examined them, embezzled from the hospital, and though dismissed in disgrace, set much of the tone for the future care within those walls. The English Renaissance and the Age of Reason didn't do much to help the patients in Bedlam. They became the subjects of many new theories, ideas, and questionable therapies, even in such a conservative space as this. They were bled, they were blistered, they were submerged, they were frozen, they were heated, purged, examined, scarred and bruised. Those who died were subjected to autopsy or used in the teaching of anatomy. The filthy old building, built over a frequently flooded sewer, was removed, and the hospital moved to a new site in Moorfields of much greater capacity and design. Its architect, the natural philosopher and polymath Robert Hooke. Its pretensions to palatial charm couldn't last, however, and by the end of the 18th century the site was as run down and ruinous as it had been before. It was as though the insanity of the patients were corrupting and twisting the building around them and drawing it into ruin. Thus, the hospital was rebuilt a third time at the beginning of the 19th century, this time at St George's Fields, combining Hooke's previous ideas with a more modern synthesis of architecture. At the same time, while cruelty continued, there was a sea change in how lunatics were treated around the country, and the inhumanity of Bedlam became less and less publicly acceptable. A final move in 1930 took the hospital to the suburbs of Croydon, a fully modern institution at that point that nonetheless couldn't escape its past, dogged by controversies over forceful restraint and other issues. No matter how many times Bedlam moved, a core of inhumanity and infectious madness seemed to follow. In the world of darkness, a distorted view of reality as it is, there is even more to Bedlam. The patrons at its founding wore a red star on their clothing to mark their loyalty, and their knights and holy men also wore the star. Since the Week of Nightmares in 1999, a red star has been seen in the sky, named Wormwood by the kindred, and seemingly this order knew of its coming far ahead of time. While the star has faded, it can still be seen on some nights by the supernatural, a symbol of the end times in which we presumably find ourselves. It seems likely that some, even many, of those who ended up in Bedlam will have been Malkavians, unwisely embraced, or insane mortals predated upon by that same clan, or others seeking an easy meal. In the cells of Bedlam, some of these undead will have met their final deaths, as the sun crept through the bars to ignite their flesh and blood. The sheer concentration of madness and inhumanity, both mortal and supernatural, appears to have broken reality, not necessarily around Bedlam as a geographical or architectural site, but as a concept. Bedlam is now a powerful entity in its own right, swallowing up the consciousness, the reality-warping insanity of those who have come into contact with it, be they marauders, be they spectres, be they Malkavians. You can think of it as a local network, where the Malkavian Madness Network is an internet for the insane, as blood calls to blood. So Bedlam is an intranet, but it is unpredictable, conscious in its own right, able to pull on the levers of reality and to warp and shift the very flesh and clay of that reality, at least for a while. It intervenes like a capricious god to help or hinder. It conveys visions that could be meaningless or of great import. It replays scenes from the past, present or future. It makes London an unpredictable and dangerous place to be for the supernatural, who attract the majority of its interventions. Though perhaps it is also Bedlam that encourages art, fashion and music within the capital, giving it influence far beyond its current state of being. Innovation and brilliance, after all, go hand in hand so often with madness. It would be remiss of me not to mention that much of this is taken from my time in the Camarilla LARP Society some years ago. The basic idea of Bedlam was in place when I became Storyteller of London, but I expanded it and made a great deal more of it, and it's too good of an idea to languish in the history of such an exclusive group. So look forward to seeing more of it in our games.
We defeat